once again, this Hype South with Child Time TV, Throw It in the Game podcast. We got a special guest. You know what I'm saying? Cap, you introduce yourself, man, and then we get to the special guest.
You know what it is. DJ Nightcap, Throw It in the Game, Child Time TV. Looking forward to this one. Let's get it.
Man, we got a special guest, man. If you want to, you go ahead and introduce yourself. Because I probably wouldn't serve you no justice. You know what I'm saying? I can try and I can be as creative as I can be, but I probably won't do you enough justice.
Oh man, appreciate that. Well, my name is Dave Mays. I am the creator of the Source magazine, as well as the Source Awards and all of that. And now I am the co-founder and CEO of Breakbeat, which is the new platform we just launched last week. The first part is a hip hop podcast network. So we've got 8 podcasts right now going. We just started release first couple of shows, and we'll be dropping more in the coming weeks and months, and adding on to our repertoire with the network.
So let's start with Breakbeat, because like podcasts right now are really like the thing, right? What made you kind of, other than realizing that trend and noticing that trend, what made you really say, man, I'm gonna create a network of podcasts?
Well, I mean, I've had a feeling for a long time that there's a void in the market when it comes to content for the hip hop community. Of course, hip hop is more popular, now than it's ever been before, and you could find hip hop related content all over the place. You can find something here, something there, but there's not one platform that comprehensively covers the culture and the issues that are important to those of us in the hip hop community, consistently, comprehensively, across a wide range of subjects. So whether it's music or social justice or business or health or sports or what have you, those of us in the hip hop community, we tend to have a certain way of looking at the world and thinking about things. We have our own kind of point of view on stuff that's usually different from people that didn't grow up with hip hop. And so I just felt like there's this void for a platform, similar in some ways to what the Source represented back in the heyday in the 90s and early 2000s. We were the magazine of hip hop music, culture, and politics, and we covered everything. So when I started to think about the best way to bring this platform to life, today's world, naturally I was attracted to podcasting because, like you said, it's a very exciting, explosive space right now. It's like to me, podcasting is like the new radio, the new television, like kind of all rolled up in one. And it's a format where new voices and perspectives can be heard, new talent can be discovered and showcased, and then also, one aspect of the podcasting industry that's been really big in driving the growth of podcast listenership are these narrative storytelling type of podcasts, not just the hosted ones like what we're doing now, but more like audio documentaries. That's a really big part of podcasting the last 5 years that's driven its growth. But when you look at that type of podcast, there's really nothing out there for the hip hop audience. There's been a couple, I got to credit Combat Jack and the first season of Mogul, the Chris Lighty story he did 4 or 5 years ago before he passed. That was an inspiration for me, what I'm doing. But beyond that, it's very little. And as you guys know, I mean, there's incredible wealth of stories within the hip hop culture that need to be told, and told authentically and told accurately. So we're doing several projects in that vein as well that we could talk about So it's a mix of different types of podcasts, different subjects. And then the last thing I'll say is, the vision of Breakbeat is to unify us across the generations. Because hip hop, as you know, it spans 3 generations now, from Gen X through the millennials to the Gen Zs. And it feels like to me that the music industry has kind of pushed this narrative that's pitting the older against the younger folks, and oh, this mumble rap isn't real hip hop, and oh, you guys are just old and out of touch, and that type of thing. And what I see is, beneath the surface of the music. So, you might be 50 years old and you grew up and you love hip hop still. You may not listen to the same music that somebody that's 21 years old is listening to. You might, but you might not. But beneath that surface of, the music, your point of view and the way you look at things, the way you think about important things in the world around us, I think we have much more in common, and that nobody's really tapping into that. So that's really the key to unlocking what I'm trying to do with the network, is create content and shows and programming that can attract, an audience from 15 to 55 years old. And if we could do that, hip hop could be so much more powerful and influential in affecting our communities and our world in more important ways.
Man, I think go ahead, Cap.
Well, I wanted to ask, Funny Marco, Coi Leray, Don't Call Me White Girl. What went into choosing which podcasts and which platforms and which voices you wanted to get Breakbeat off the ground and introduced to the masses?
Sure. Well, I've spent the last few years thinking about this and trying to figure out, again, the right way to create the platform, and then who to have a part of it. So I've been watching and just looking for voices out there, talent that I think has potential. And so our first podcast that was released last week is the Don't Call Me White Girl show. I mean, she's a superstar. Like, she's going to be really big. I mean, everybody, not only is she funny, but she's smart. She's kind of, in a lot of ways, the epitome of kind of the DNA of Breakbeat, something that's, that appeals to the street, and, has that street sensibility, but also is thought provoking. And she covers all those bases. I saw her on $1 Million Worth of Game podcast last year. They had her on as a guest host for a few shows, and I was like, man, she's dope. And my partner and I, said we need to, go after her. So that was one. I mean, Funny Marco is a guy I've been following on Instagram, like a lot of us have the last few years, and I mean, he's just hilarious. I mean, but we saw the potential in him to take his, comedic sense beyond the pranks and the skits and stuff that he's known for, and into actually a podcast form. So his podcast, which we're about to start filming in a few days, is going to be a little more comedic formats, just different funny segments to it. He'll be sitting with different artists and producers and different people from the culture down there in Atlanta, but it'll have more like fun segments to it. Coi Leray is produced and hosted by a woman who I've known for many years. She got her start at The Source, fresh out of college. Kieran Mayo started at The Source in the early 90s, and she went on to having a remarkable career, like many people who started at The Source have. Kieran started Honey Magazine. You guys probably remember back in the late 90s. That was really influential in terms of, the Black, hip hop kind of point of view. And she went on, she was editor-in-chief at Ebony Magazine for a few years, and she's done a lot of other things. She's really, really well respected. And I've just always, thought she has a great kind of sense for what the community wants to talk about and hear about. And so hers is a little more, it's a little more polished production produced
Right.
kind of show. I don't know if you guys listened to the trailer. The first episodes drop tomorrow. So though, and that kind of, is like this balance. So like I call White Girl, Don't Call Me White Girl, and Marco sort of like my unsigned hypes of Breakbeat. These are people I think become stars like Biggie and Common and DMX, all the people we discovered in Unsigned Hype years ago. And beyond those three shows, I mean, yeah, I can just talk about two of the, one, you guys may notice the background here, the Dave Mays Show. So my podcast is coming probably the end of the month or 1st of November. That's something I've been thinking about also. And a lot of people have been encouraging me to do my own show. Just, I'm a guy that's, obviously I've been in hip hop now 30 plus years, but I've been, around, many of the most important and influential moments in hip hop over the years. And, I've always been I was always a behind the scenes type of guy. I didn't want to get the credit or put my name or my face out there, which is probably why, there's a lot of people that don't know who I am these days. But I think my perspective, my relationships with people, I can talk to people in a way that not too many other people can, just because, I know them for so long, and I was there, and helped a lot of these people that are, big today get their starts in the business and so on. So I'm looking forward to that. And we have this show called Trapping Anonymous. This guy, he had put his podcast out independently a few years ago. My man Chris Samuel, and he's just an incredible talent. Also interviews people anonymously. The new season, he's interviewing a guy that picks up dead bodies and dissects them for the state of New York. But he talks about all, people really open up on that show because it's anonymous and they're able to just tell you all the crazy stuff. So he's talked to, scammers and strippers, and and he's got a priest, a preacher coming up on one of his first episodes. And I just think his show is going to be really, really interesting to listen to and watch.
It sounds real creative. What I'm saying? Because one thing about this generation, you able to, it's just creatives everywhere. You know what I mean? One person can have an idea that the world might never heard of, but then time go by and that it's the next big thing. As the creatives is we living in a time right now where, creative is a great thing. You know what I'm saying? It's a really, really good thing. And then you talk about the cycle of hip hop, kind of like the different generations of hip hop. You know what I mean? And you've been around the game for so long. Kind of talk about your relationship with like Benzino, but also the cycle that's brought, like his daughter being a star in hip hop, and you know what I mean, kind of spanning over so many different years and so many different decades of you kind of seeing a full circle of it.
Sure. Well, Benzino is a guy that I met when I was in college. I went to Harvard and started a source out of my dorm room at Harvard back in 1988. I was hosting a hip-hop radio show on the Harvard radio station, and it got pretty big in the Boston area. People knew me from the show, and he had the hottest local rap group in the city at the time, Almighty RSO. So we connected through the radio show and the music and became friends. Over the years, and I helped him obviously with his music career, got them a bunch of record deals, and then I eventually asked him in the 90s at one point to come in as a partner with me in the company. But we're not working together anymore. We kind of parted ways about 5 years ago. I just wanted to kind of do my own thing and get back, kind of restart, come up with this new plan, and new strategy, a new platform, something I've been thinking about for a long time. And I mean, as far as his daughter Coi goes, I mean, I'm happy to see her success. She she's been talented from a young age. She was making music much long time ago, and was always around the studio with her dad, and so it's nice to see her having the success that she's having these days.
So Breakbeat, obviously, it's not the first podcast network out there. You know what I mean? There's plenty of them out there now, some really successful ones, but none of them have Dave Mays behind them, the Dave Mays expertise or experience or anything like that. And being that you already have accomplished so much in hip hop, how do you plan on using that experience and those accomplishments to separate Breakbeat from the rest of the pack?
Yeah, I mean, definitely I've got a lot of experience. I learned a lot, I made a lot of mistakes, had a lot of successes, but learned a lot and had the time these past few years to kind of reflect on things and think about the best way to apply everything going forward. And, yeah, I think, I'm definitely going to be a driving force behind Breakbeat's success. I've got so many ideas and I'm so excited about it. I mean, it's just something I'm very passionate about. I've loved hip hop from the first time I heard it, when I was growing up in Washington, D.C. And, just something that attracted me and just, just the culture and just the power of it. And ultimately, the ability to affect change. That's what I think we need as a community, a hip hop community, certainly, the Black community, in our inner cities and disadvantaged communities. I think hip hop should have by now done more to impact the world in those areas. And there's a lot of reasons why it hasn't happened, but that's a personal goal for me and for Breakbeat to kind of pick up the mantle, so to speak, where I left off 15 years ago at the source, and bring that same energy, but in this new world through podcasting and other digital media and technology. We're definitely heading into the technology arena as well with Breakbeat. Oh, I can't hear you.
Your mic is muted.
I got you. Do you think a great podcaster is just as powerful or even more powerful as a great writer?
Yeah, I mean, I kind of think like a podcast network is like the new digital magazine. People have been talking about digital magazines for 20 years, but it's never worked. There's not one digital magazine we can say, oh, I read this digital magazine every week or every month or anything. It just hasn't worked. And that was one of my ideas with the podcast network. It's like, the same way a magazine like The Source, would have different columns. You'll have a column on sports, a column on politics, a column on fashion, a column on music, what have you. Those are all different podcasts now. So I definitely feel like podcasting is the new way to bring important voices out and stories and perspectives. Very, very excited about what podcasting has to offer. And it's still, as big as it is, there's still a huge amount of upside. You guys probably know. I mean, there's a lot of people that don't even know they have a podcast app on their phone, that there's, thousands and thousands of podcasts that they can listen to. Some people still just go to YouTube and watch podcasts there, but the audio side of podcasting is huge. So there's a lot of growth in the space, and I'm just excited and think we can make an impact.
Your mic is muted.
Here we go again, huh, man? So, this will be my last day, huh?
So I got a question for Dave. Actually, you, not about Breakbeat. Like you've been around for a long time. You've seen a lot of things happen in hip hop, first row, firsthand experience, all that. And I wanted to know what's your favorite era of hip hop? Is it the Grandmaster Flash, Grandmaster Cass, Rakim, Big Daddy Kane? Go on down the line to the Ja Rule, Jay-Z, DMX era, the Outkast, Southern Explosion era, this new trap area. What is Dave Mays' favorite era of hip hop?
You know what I can say is, I mean, I mentioned before, I grew up in Washington, D.C., and the fact is, I grew up much more into go-go music because that was what was dominant in the 80s. We did get, you know, I did hear Rapper's Delight on the radio there, and I heard the Breaks, and The Message was a really influential song in my life when I first heard that. But when I went to college is when I really jumped full steam into hip hop, and that was in '86. So if you think about it, this is the emergence of what, you know, the golden era of hip hop. This is Boogie Down Productions, Eric B. and Rakim, you know, Public Enemy, Ghetto Boys, a lot of other really important acts. So that was a really exciting time to be a part of that and just be, you know, doing my radio show and then starting The Source when all that was going on. But, you know, you know, it's like I've just grown with the music and the culture. So, you know, I'm listening to, you know, the new stuff today, as well as still listening to classic music. And, you know, I love all the eras. You know, I wouldn't pin it down to one favorite era.
That's what's up. I can dig it. I can dig it.
That's fair, man. That's fair. You know, we down here in Houston, we love, you know, what we do or what we've done, and you know what I mean. I know y'all created the 5 mic system, you know what I mean, and the Diary, Scarface The Diary, got 5 mics. I know it was a great album, but I want to hear it from, you know what I'm saying, from you. What made Scarface Diary album, in your opinion, a 5 mic album?
Well, the truth is, when it came out, it got 4 mics. And what happened is we went back some years later at The Source and we re-rated certain albums that we felt we had rated incorrectly. So The Diary was among that list that got upgraded from its original rating to the 5 mics. So I can say, you know, we made, you know, obviously we didn't get everything right. The Chronic got 4.5, and that obviously got revised to 5 mics. And, you know, there's a lot of other ones on that list. So, but, you know, at the time that The Diary came out, you know, the Ghetto Boys had, you know, been making an impact for a number of years. And, you know, there was a certain affinity that folks had for Face. I mean, Willie was dope and Bill was dope as well, the whole group. But obviously Face, you know, had a certain appeal and following amongst folks that really felt, you know, he stood out. And, you know, we're supporting his solo careers. And I think that album just came out at the right time when, you know, the marketplace and was maturing. And I mean, he made an amazing album. I mean, he's no question, he's one of the greatest lyricists and artists in the history of hip hop. And there were just so many great songs on that album. It was one of those albums that, you know, you can just listen through all the way without skipping. And that's definitely something, you know, that signifies a 5 mic album, something that you're not going to be skipping tracks through. So, I mean, you know, that's the greatest songs of all time. You know, one of the most powerful songs of all time on that album, along with, you know, some of the other great stuff. I think Mind Playing Tricks on Me remake or whatever was on there. I love that song. There's a bunch of stuff on there that was great.
Man, Face, all time great to me. Do he go into your top 5 all time?
He's in my top 5, yeah, no question.
What's up? What's up?
So me? Cal? Yeah, go ahead. Unless you just want me to keep on running, baby.
Go ahead.
You know what I'm saying? Pimp C, you know what I mean? Just talk to me about, you know what I'm saying, what you think Pimp C's life and death, or let's go from his life to his incarceration to his death, kind of impacted hip hop, and then of course his passing You know what I'm saying? As far as Southern hip hop is concerned.
Yeah, I mean, tragic loss. Pimp was one of a kind. You know, people loved him, people respected him in a way that very few others have received over the years, in hip hop. He's right up there at the top of the list of most respected, artists and people in the hip hop community. So yeah, I mean, him and Bun and UGK obviously had an impact over the years, helping to bring authentic Southern hip hop to the forefront, and to the masses. I don't think there was anyone that really did it like they did it so consistently and with that style. And obviously, Bun has become an incredible, ambassador of the culture and voice for the culture. So yeah, I mean, I think I think Pimp had a lot more to offer, and I wish we hadn't lost him.
Straight up. Man, tell me, in 1988, that's when you started the Source, or was it?
Yeah.
Was 88 when you started the Source in 88. What were was it an artist that you recognized or a particular trend? Because at that time it was more like what you would consider like a fad, right? And we didn't really know if it would. I didn't. Well, I wouldn't. I was born. I would have been a year. You know what I'm saying? But maybe y'all two can, kind of clear it up a little bit. But at the time, I would think, because that was still early days of hip hop, right? And to go full-fledged into creating a magazine, I know it started out with a small publication and then it eventually grew and became what it became. But like, what trend did you recognize, or was it a particular artist or something that you saw and you was like, because I know when we do things, I know when I do things as a person, as a part journalist and things, I look at certain people that kind of gravitate me to certain subjects, or maybe my mind might wonder, like, what's something that drew you to it other than just great music?
Sure. Well, I mean, what I can say is, as far as people think it was a fad, that wasn't the young folks. Like, anyone who was 25, 15 to 25 in 88, like, we were locked in on hip hop already. You had the Run DMCs, you had obviously the Grandmaster Flash and everything else. And then all of a sudden there was this explosion of creativity and consciousness and lyrics, that started in 86 or so. So, there was no question in my mind, but amongst most young people that were listening to hip hop back then. I mean, we loved it, and that was all that mattered to us. And there was no thought that it was a fad that would go away. The inspiration really came because I was doing my radio show. So I started to build a mailing list of my listeners, because I went out to try to sell sponsorships of my radio show, and the local businesses in the Boston area were kind of laughing at me like, oh, who's listening to a hip hop show on Harvard's radio station, that type of thing. And I had listeners all over the city, because back then you couldn't find hip hop on the radio hardly at all, especially in Boston. Only college stations played it periodically. So I would answer the phones every week when my show came on. I would, answer the phones, tell people to call in. I would take down name and address to build my mailing list to show people how many listeners I had. But, I had a lot of conversations with people when they would call, and, there was just this thirst for information. People, when is the new, Public Enemy album coming out, or who produced this song, and when is that? People just wanted to know information, and there was nowhere. The only thing you could do back in those days was take a walk down to your local record store and ask them what was going on. Outside of that, you couldn't find information, in a magazine or in a newspaper, or, or on the radio or on TV or anything like that. And this is obviously long before social media and the internet. So that really was the motivation, was like, wow, you know, I can create an outlet to provide this audience with the news and information that they need and that they want. And I read a book about the history of Rolling Stone magazine, which I didn't really know about at the time, but Rolling Stone was started in the late 60s by this young rock and roll fan guy named Jan Winter. And it started as an underground newspaper, but he built it up as the voice of the rock generation. So in the 70s and 80s, by that time, Rolling Stone was like, you know, the biggest pop culture magazine in the world. So I learned a lot from reading that book about parallels between rock and hip hop. And that really got me to the idea that I want to create the Rolling Stone for the hip hop generation. And you know, I was always an entrepreneur as a younger person, always trying to find different hustles and different ways to make money. So I had that drive. And this was something that just combined that entrepreneurial drive with this love of this incredible music and culture that was so, you know, exciting and empowering back then. So that became it. Like I stopped going to classes, and, you know, I just, my whole thing was, I'm going to build this up, you know, from this one page and this $200 into, you know, the Rolling Stone of hip hop. And of course, the Source eventually surpassed Rolling Stone as a number one selling music magazine on newsstands in the world in the 90s. So.
Okay, this will be my last question, man. I'm sure when you started this in 1988, going from radio to magazine to eventually building something that hip hop stood on top of, I'm sure you had your fair share of challenges and troubles to run in, you know, that you ran into. But now you're starting a podcast network in a digital age where the internet has made the world a much smaller place than what it used to be. What kind of challenges and, you know, and obstacles are you facing now, as opposed to the types of challenges and obstacles you faced back then?
Yeah, I mean, it's interesting. I think there's some that are actually similar and then some that are different. I mean, you know, right now, like we were talking about earlier, I mean, there's so many podcasts, so much content, you know, out there. Obviously, one of the biggest challenges is, how do you stand out? How do you build an audience? But you know, for me, that's going to come from the content, you know, and identifying the right talent, the right host, the right show topics that fill this void that I was talking about out there for the hip hop community. So hopefully, you know, my instincts are still good. I got a pretty good track record of picking stars, not just in Unsigned Hype, but in other, you know, executive talent. The people working with me, I really believe in a lot. I think are going to help contribute to the long-term success. So, I mean, you know, when I say similar, one of the things that comes to mind is, like, even in the advertising world, even though back then when I was taking the Source out to try to get advertising, this is in the 90s, by the time I was in New York, and I'm trying to get Nike and Coca-Cola and places like that to advertise, and, you know, generally getting the door slammed in my face. You know, back then, those companies really had no clue about hip hop. And today, obviously, they do. But I still feel like the way hip hop is thought about in the corporate and the advertising world is limiting. I think, again, going back to what I was talking about before, the music has been just the primary driver of the visibility of the culture to people, and awareness of what hip hop is comes from the music. And there's so much more beneath that surface of the music within the culture and everything that I don't think is fully appreciated by the advertising world. And so I'm excited about that challenge, you know, get back out in front of these brands to help them really understand why breakbeat is necessary, and why, you know, why hip hop may be a little more diversified, you know, than some people may still think it is today.
Well, man, we we appreciate you, man. We're running out of time. We wish we could sit here and chop it up with you for an hour and a half, 2 hours. You know what I mean? You got a wealth of information. You know what I mean? And so much you've seen, so much you've experienced. It's just fun to just sit down and talk to people like you. You know what I mean? It's valuable. It's on the cold. It's cool in a motherfucker, man. On the cold, if we being 100, you know what I'm saying? It's cold in a motherfucker. But man, next time you're in Houston, tap in with us. And man, hopefully, man, who knows, maybe we can come be a part of the Breakbeat podcast network. You know what I'm saying? Wink, wink, or however that works. You know what I mean? But
yeah, let's definitely build, man. I like what you guys are doing. If anything, I'll get your contact info from the publicist and vice versa, so you guys can follow up with me. And maybe I can come back on the show because we're going to be announcing a lot of new things with Breakbeat. My show's coming in, and I didn't really get to touch on the documentary series we're doing. I got two big ones. The story of the unsigned hype column and the source is coming as an 8-part series.
Thanks for watching. For more all exclusive, all original content all the time, subscribe to Child Time TV.